Welcome to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, a podcast about geek culture by lawyers with your hosts, Ben Siders and Kirk Taman.
And welcome back to Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, the podcast that asks interesting questions that don't have any answers with your host, Ben Siders. That's me. And the other guy is, as always, Kirk Taman.
That's Kirk as the Captain of the Enterprise.
We are here to talk about, I already forgot our read-in thing. We're going to talk about our Kenobi predictions. For once, we both actually finished a show shortly after it was done on the air. Kirk, I think I finished it last week. Kirk finished it Monday?
Monday, yep.
And today is Wednesday when we're recording this. So we are ready to talk about our predictions, and I think this may be the most accurate we've ever gotten. Not in terms of like whether we were right or not, but just the sort of scale of things we thought might happen.
It's interesting as to sort of what it is, because it's also one of those that in some sense I think we were probably the least sure of any of these, because we really had no idea where the show was going to go.
Yeah, we've been faked out one too many times by Disney Star Wars trailers, and so we were extremely mistrustful of everything we saw, and it turned out for a good reason.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into these, and you may recall that I had written up a list of I think 10 or 11 of these, to which Kirk added additional questions, half points, and all kinds of other insanity. So we're going to go over that here. So question number 1 is actually question number 0.5. Kenobi's last words to Darth Maul in Rebels will be explained. I don't remember what they were, because I haven't seen it yet. So Kirk, give us some background on that.
It has to do with the idea about the prophecy being fulfilled. Again, it was a little while since I saw this. And basically Darth Maul saying, hey, we will, he will have our revenge and stuff like that. I think the answer to this question is clearly no. The Kenobi episodes, and again, we should point out there's a ton of spoilers in this if you haven't seen Kenobi.
Yes.
And if you haven't, go watch it. It's really, really good.
Yes.
But
we'll do general thoughts at the end.
Yeah. But the basics of, I think, what we had here is there was really no reference at all to the Rebels stuff.
Yeah, not really. We thought we were going to go there, and they really didn't.
Yeah, we thought they were going to go there, and they just didn't. So I think the answer to that is definitely no, and I think we both said there might be. But
I'm not sure how to grade this one, so here's what we said. This was one of mine. There's a line spoken by Vader in A New Hope that says, "The last time we met, I was but the learner, now I am the master," which implies some final meeting in which Vader was still Kenobi's inferior.
Yeah.
And I think we had all thought after Episode 3 that the final confrontation on Mustafar was it. And you and I talked about, will they have an actual confrontation between Vader and Kenobi?
Which they clearly did.
Which they did.
And
here's what I said. Vader and Kenobi have the referenced final meeting during this series, probably as the finale.
That was pretty much dead on.
That was it. So we both got a point. We both said yes. We both got a point for that one.
Yeah, I do think it definitely does explain the you're the learner, I was the master. I mean, we have a whole lot of references about the apprentice in that, the references to is he Anakin, is he Vader? That's exactly what they were explaining.
Yes, so we got that one right. I actually thought that was a bit of a stretch, maybe too specific, but no, we nailed it. Okay, number 2. True or false, the Tatooine-heavy trailer footage is a head fake. The action takes place in a compressed time frame, but most of the series is set elsewhere.
It's hard to know. Tatooine is a major, component of it.
It's a part of it, but I'd say, other than the first and last episodes, not much takes place on Tatooine.
Yeah, in many respects, the key to it was to get him off Tatooine. And they're both new locations. I mean, we see Alderaan for the first time, obviously, and then we see sort of this new planet that was introduced. I think we have to say that it is a bit of a head fake. It really was not Tatooine heavy.
Yeah.
I guess the thought being Tatooine heavy is that it was going to be Luke heavy, which also is clearly not
the
true.
case.
So
I said yes, you said no. So this may be the first time in the history of this thing that I'm ahead of you.
You beat me on one of these.
Okay, number 3, cameo watch. We get at least one of the following when he was young cameos of an Imperial character: Krennic, Tarkin, Ozzel, Gideon, or Boba Fett. And if either one of us got our pick right, we got a bonus point. We were completely wrong.
Not a single one of them.
Nothing was there. So that was a big swing and a miss. Okay, and then Kirk added cameo watch 3.5. We get a critical character from Rebels: Ezra, Kanan, Gideon, Maul, or Thrawn. Again, nothing.
Total big miss.
Nothing. Big swing and a miss there too. Okay, number 4. We see Vader without his helmet, otherwise why cast Christensen? Clearly, yes.
Yes, we clearly saw him.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him both as Anakin, and we see Vader as Anakin.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that, because that's one of the best parts of this whole thing. Number 5, Kenobi visits or communicates with Yoda on Dagobah to discuss Luke.
I think I said yes to this one, didn't I?
We both said yes, and the answer was no.
No, yeah, and that did kind of surprise me. I did truly expect Yoda to appear in this at some point in time. Even as I was watching it, I still expected Yoda.
I did too. I kept waiting for it, and the longer there was no Yoda, the more convinced I was that there was going to be a Qui-Gon. So we'll get to that too. Okay, this is where it starts to get squishy because I'm not sure how to interpret some of these because these are your additions. Okay, 5.3. This is where the numbering got screwed up. Kenobi's later defeat at Vader's hands is foreshadowed.
So this is the one I had from this is we see Obi-Wan when he faces Vader in A New Hope basically gives up.
Yeah, that's another one you've got here.
Yeah, he does not fight, as to what it is. Do we have the idea that, and again, this also ties into a later question, did Obi-Wan know Vader would defeat him?
Yeah.
And that's part of, essentially the way I had it was, does he leave Tatooine knowing how this ends?
Yeah.
It's essential for Luke
because we know Jedi have some ability, some limited ability to kind of see future possibilities.
Yeah. And the way I saw this potentially happening, it was in conjunction with the Qui-Gon, with a Qui-Gon, with a Force Ghost, with some kind of a prediction of the future. I actually thought when I saw the thing right at the very end when he has the flashbacks to Leia, I actually thought he had seen Leia in Return of the Jedi. I went back and slow-mode through that entire section. He does not.
Okay.
He sees a young Leia who happens to look disturbingly like the one in Return of the Jedi, but he does not. So I think the answer to this question is no. We are not foreshadowed any of the events of New Hope, from this, which again, I expected him to have some foreshadowing of the events of New Hope, and I think the answer is no.
We'll do 1/3 points for these because they're all sub-points. So we both said no. So we were both right about that. So I'm going to give me 3 1/3, and now you're up to 2 1/3. Okay. 5.4. We learn that Kenobi's death is critical to defeating Vader, the Emperor, or the Sith.
Yep.
In other words, we learn why he raises his blade and allows himself to be struck down, which a Jedi has never done that we've seen.
That we've seen. It's the first time we've ever seen a Jedi allow himself to be killed on purpose. As to what we have with this. Again, no. Yep. I think we did get a little bit of an explanation as to why, but I can't say that we know why he does it. He's not told why he does it. We just have a little bit more of his motivation.
So I said no, you said yes. So I pulled ahead by another third of a point. Okay. Then 5.5, Kenobi, possibly with Yoda and other Jedi, reinterpret the prophecy to make it about Luke, or to otherwise better understand Anakin or Vader.
Yeah, and the idea behind this is that you have the issue of the, and this was again from Rebels, the idea of, that he sort of indicates Luke may be the one to fulfill the prophecy, not Anakin. Is there going to be any kind of touch in this? Are we going to touch on this idea of the prophecy and Anakin being the one that's prophesized about? While in some sense I think they touched on it, they clearly did not reinterpret it or make any other assertion with it.
Yeah, it was more just about backfilling the Kenobi Vader story.
I have to say no.
Yeah, so I said no on that one, so I'm up to 4 points. You're still at 2 1/3. So I'm ahead by 1 2/3 points. This is turning into whose line is it anyway with the points. Okay, number 6, cynical marketing foo. We get a Grogu origin story and it involves Yoda or another direct tie into the Mandalorian. Nope. No. We were right about that. We both said no, they weren't going to do that.
I have to wonder how much that is because Ewan McGregor was the executive producer.
Yeah, he kept the camera pretty tightly focused. Number 7, we get at least one of the following Alliance/light side cameos: Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar, General Madine, or Bail Organa.
Bail Organa, obviously.
He was in there, but we both said no, so we both got that one wrong. I really didn't think they were going to dig Jimmy Smits up and throw him in front of the camera. Okay, number 8, we get an origin story for the Old Ben moniker. Not really an origin story. Like, we see him using it, but we don't know why he picked that name.
Yeah, we don't know why he picked Ben, but we obviously get why he's not using Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
I think that's the key with it. And so I think we answered it as we have to say yes. I think we also get why Luke knows him as Old Ben.
Yeah.
And so my take of that is we do now understand why he has 2 names. I think that's the answer to it.
Yeah. The spirit of the question, yeah. And we both said yes. We both get a point there. Okay, number 9. More cynical marketing foo. There's an Ahsoka Thrawn tie-in and or they tease a new series involving a live-action Ezra Bridger. I didn't actually stick around to watch the post-credit sequence. I assume there wasn't one.
There wasn't one. We actually watched to see if there was one, and there was not one. Right. At least that it showed. We were kind of stunned. We went back and watched the credits again. I was actually stunned we didn't see an Ahsoka one, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I was fully
We both said yes
on
Ahsoka, no to Ezra. So we were wrong on the first one, right on the second one. So I give us each a half a point there. Yeah, that seems like a... Okay, now I got to add a third, 2.5. I'm just going to 4 1/3 plus 0.5. Okay. Number 10... resurrecting the past, we get a Force Ghost or other cameo of one of the following dead characters: Qui-Gon Jinn, Shmi Skywalker, Padme Amidala, or Mace Windu.
We obviously got Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon at the very, very end. We both said no, so we both whiffed on that one too. Although we kind of knew We knew what direction they were going to go in with this. When he was praying to Qui-Gon early on, I'm like, well, obviously they're going to have
I have a
Qui-Gon
feeling we were
at
going to
some
get that
point.
at the end, yeah.
Okay, number 11. We learn why Obi-Wan initially tells Luke that Vader killed his father instead of the truth.
I think we did. And the reason I'm going to say this, and I talk about it, is immediately after watching the last episode of Kenobi, I went and watched the initial interaction between, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke from A New Hope. And I have to give some credit to Alec Guinness. It looks like he had seen Kenobi when you watch him do this.
He hesitates
amazing.
a moment in 4, and it kind of works.
And the way he says it, and I have to assume this was good script writing and good acting on behalf of the people in Kenobi. It really looks like he's saying, he's parroting back the phrase of, you didn't kill Anakin, I did.
Yeah.
Phrase back is exactly what he's parroting back. And I'm like, I think that's why he tells it to him, is because he says, no, your father is truly dead. In some sense, what I said was true from certain points of view.
Yeah.
In Return of the Jedi is less accurate than what he says.
From Anakin's point of view, I guess. So we all said yes. I'm at 7.5. I just did the math. You're at 5 and 5/6.
So basically, I can't win. But.
Okay. Well, hang on. There's plenty left here. So number 12. The Empire will be indicated to have or be researching cloning technology to tie into the Bad Batch.
Yep. Nope. Not at all.
So that didn't happen. I said yes, so I'm wrong. You said no, you were right. So you're up to 6 and 5/6, and I'm at 7.5. This is insane. Okay. Okay, number 13. We learn why Luke is steered to be a Jedi, but not Leia.
We learn why Luke is not steered to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
I think we definitely get the separation between Luke and Leia and the association with Luke and Leia a little bit. I think the answer to this question has to be no, because what we thought where they were going to go with this and the idea behind it is not where they went at all.
No.
And so I think we have to say no as to what it is. We do get a nice indication of why Obi-Wan is less watchful of Luke at this stage.
So I'm at 8. We both said no. So I'm at 8.5. You're at 7 and 5/6. Okay, we skipped 14. Number 15, a new Jedi character is introduced. So this is debatable.
Yes. I have to say yes.
Is Reva a Jedi?
Reva is a Jedi. Right? She's a youngling.
Yeah.
So she is a Jedi apprentice at the point in time we originally meet her. They have clearly indicated the fact that she's still Force sensitive. She is an Inquisitor. Yes, she's an Inquisitor. She's a Sith. But she also arguably turns from the dark side based on what Ben says, making her a Jedi.
Yeah.
That's my take.
I think you can make that argument. This one's important because I said no and you said yes. So if she's a Jedi, then you win by a third of a point.
I really think we have to call her a Jedi. I understand the concern sort of with it, but my take, if it wasn't for Ben's interaction with her at the end, I don't think she is. I think she's just a youngling. At that point in time, she's an Inquisitor. She's converted as to whatever it is. But the idea of the redemption arc of her, where he says am I going to become him? And the phrase of now the decision is yours.
Like we'd say Anakin was clearly a Jedi, right? Even though he was still a Padawan.
Yeah, he was still a Padawan and stuff like that. I kind of look at it and say, at that point in time, I think we've said she's on the path to be a Jedi, which makes her a Padawan.
Would you consider the Sith to be basically a Jedi, like dark Jedi?
Yeah, I mean, they are, but they aren't. I think Jedi means non-Sith. I think, it's Force user is Jedi or Sith.
Okay.
It's an important question because I think that the hard part with it is we will answer that question if she gets her own show.
Yep.
Which I really hope they do.
yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, so that leaves me at 8.5 and Kirk at 8 and 5/6. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw it to the audience. I'm going to put a poll on Twitter after we release this, and we'll leave it open for a week. We don't usually get a ton of Twitter engagement, but if you happen to happen to read us on Twitter, go vote on our Twitter poll as to whether or not we should count Reva as a Jedi. And then you, the listener, will decide who won this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate question. She is exactly supposed to be ambiguous.
Yeah. Okay, and then we had our tiebreaker. Who says I got a bad feeling about this? I don't think anybody did.
Nobody did.
Yeah.
I'm so hoping it was going to be Reva, because then I would have been right that it was a dark side character.
I said it'd be another legacy character, Owen, and you said that it would be...
It would be an Inquisitor.
And nobody said it.
I was so expecting Reva to say it after they sort of started with her character.
All right, so there we go. So we'll put the Twitter poll out. Go on our Twitter and vote on whether Reva should be counted as a Jedi. Remember, if you say she is, then Kirk wins. If you say she's not, I win. And then it'll be my first ever win in one of these. Kirk always wins by a point or two. So setting this aside, Kirk, general thought, scale of 1 to 10, where does Kenobi sit on the pantheon of Disney series?
8.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I was incredibly impressed with Kenobi. It was a difficult property for them to potentially run with. It had baggage. It had things with it. You've got to deal with Anakin and the sort of half the fans love him, half the fans hate him. As Hayden Christensen, sort of the things like that. This was so well done.
Yeah,
it was coherent. It was a cool story. It was well plot laid out.
It had a lot of attention to detail to make sure that it fit in coherently with what we already know, which is way harder now than it was with the prequels. Because with the prequels, you ended 18 years before Episode 4, and there was a lot of time in there to just kind of hand wave away, a bunch of stuff happened. The droids had their memories wiped. That's why 3PO says his first job was programming binary load lifters. Yeah, so you don't have that now. We have a lot more. First of all, you have the prequels, which box you in on the other side, and we have Rebels, The Bad Batch. We have a lot of Rogue One, Solo. We have a lot more content that fills in the holes in this time period. So you've got to write this story. You're going to make it, I didn't think they're going to go here at all, but you're going to make it about Luke and Leia, which is really dangerous to go that route.
But it's really about Leia.
It is. And to make it to use kids, also very dangerous after the backlash to Episode 1. So they really, I think, took some narrative risks telling this story the way that they did. And I agree with you. I think they largely pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with this was I thought they really pulled off a very compelling, interesting story that both simultaneously filled in the mythos and didn't. They really didn't explain much. But they obviously gave you the ability to say this is where certain things came from. The helmet obviously being sort of the thing with it. The one thing I commented, and I haven't even told you this yet, but I said one of the things that to me I loved about the helmet is they have now tied both Anakin's actors together.
Yes. That was something that has always bothered me. At the end of Episode 3, because David Prowse played Darth Vader in the original, and he's like 8 feet tall. And Hayden Christensen, no offense, Hayden, but you're not.
Yeah.
So, you see Hayden Christensen's character going into the suit, but when Darth Vader stands up and it's James Earl Jones, the visual connection was never there for me. And even in the third episode of this, when you finally see Vader, they really wanted you to connect the appearance of Anakin as portrayed by Christensen with the suit. Yeah. And I didn't really think this series had really done it until that last duel where Obi-Wan hits the helmet and you see Christensen through the face and the voice modulation switching back and forth. And I was like, this is it. This is the blending of the two personalities into one. And that's the exact moment when Vader tells us, no, it's not. Anakin's dead.
Yeah, the thing that I liked about it is to me it was actually, and I forget the actor's name, the actor who plays Vader with his helmet off in Return of the Jedi, that originally was the Force Ghost flashback that was then edited out and replaced with Anakin. I have the one thing I will give the Kenobi credit with. That is the one special edition change that now makes sense.
It makes more sense. It
made Hayden Christensen
Sebastian Shaw, that's what it was.
That's it. It now makes Hayden Christensen appearing in that scene instead of Sebastian Shaw as the dead Vader, the Force Ghost Vader, now makes sense because the idea that Anakin was the good guy, Anakin was Hayden Christensen. After that point in time, he was Vader. What we saw in the suit was still Vader. But what I liked about it is when you see him with the partially broken mask, you see Shaw. You can see the makeup people did a great job of making them look similar. Yeah. With the idea of the appearance, the sort of, wasted away appearance. Even though technically he probably shouldn't be that wasted away yet because it's not that old. But to me, that was the great thing about it, was to actually see the idea that, no, this is now, Vader as Vader is.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I had really disliked that change to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
I really didn't like it. It felt unnecessary and pointless, but if Anakin is truly, in the mythos of the universe, dead as of that point, then it should look more like Christensen than Sebastian Shaw's character. I guess you could argue that, but then he turns back into Anakin, because at the end, his last words to Luke is, "You were right." He was redeemed. He becomes Anakin again before he dies. So so you really go either way with that. We're really nitpicking this to death, but it at least makes it a more justifiable narrative choice, I think, as opposed to just pointlessly trying to shoehorn the prequels back into the original series.
Yes, which was what it really felt like sort of originally, but yeah. And I love the way they did it because I did like the Smash Mask, and obviously the relationship between the Smash Mask we see there and the Smash Mask in Empire Strikes Back in the cave. It was one of those things where...
And then Kylo Ren later, a generation later, smashes his mask and puts it back together. And
particularly the fact that they basically cut the mask exactly the same as it was in Return of the Jedi when Empire Strikes Back when it explodes. And you see Luke's face. In addition to the fact that during that time we see is when Luke is being chased by the Inquisitor. That was one of those scenes where I'm like, I don't know how much of that was purposefully intentional, but some of it was. All of it could have been. Regardless, the packaging of that particular segment is so well done in the mythos. It's going to stand as purposeful, even if it wasn't.
Well, and there's a lighting choice that I think is purposeful, where they've got the blue and the red lightsabers are both flickering on his face. And I'll go back and watch it again, but I'm pretty sure when he finally says, like, no, you didn't kill Anakin, I did, I'm pretty sure the blue lightsaber turns off, or they just get rid of the blue light.
Yeah, no, Obi-Wan turns it off because he starts walking away.
Yeah, I think that timing is purposeful.
Yeah, in addition, you actually then see him, as I haven't, because I was going back and looking at the scene of trying to watch the flashback, which is right after that, to him looking at Leia. When you see Anakin watching him go away, you actually see the red light on his face from his saber, because his saber is still ignited, and it is actually, he's using it in some respects to help pull himself along when he's so badly injured. I think that there's not any question that was purposeful. That was the idea of lighting. And that's the one thing I have to call out with this. And, the woman who did the music for this is channeling John Williams. Like, she did an amazing job with the music of this. The music is evocative, it's subtle, but like you catch it, in a way. And to me, it's exactly what made John Williams, and like why he was so great at doing this. She has completely captured that in Kenobi, and quite frankly, I'm hoping they keep her and having her do more stuff with this because it's just so good.
It also was it was nice to see Alderaan finally. Like we haven't really gotten to see it. I think a little bit in the animation, but we never really seen it in live action. That was neat. Getting to see Jimmy Smits was neat, and getting to see a little bit of a tension with Leia, kind of knowing she knows that they're not really her parents. I think. Yeah,
she clearly knows she's adopted.
Yeah.
But she doesn't, I think, she knows nothing about her parents, and her parents obviously...
Because she asked Obi-Wan at some point, are you my real father? And he's like, no, but I knew him. Well, in that speech at the end where he tells her, like, I did know your parents, you get this from your father, this from your mother, that was really well done. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, we talked before the Rise of Skywalker, and one of our predictions was, are they going to do anything narratively in the movie that makes us change the way we feel about the prequels, or change how we interpret the prequels, that somehow redeems them? This series really made me like the prequels better. I've not gone back and rewatched them. I don't think objectively they are any better, but just the opening montage of prequel sequences they showed, I was like, boy, if they had done that right, it really would have been good. Like, because the story that they tell in that little sequence, that little montage, I'm like, I kind of want to go watch them again now.
Yeah, they did some great jobs, I think, in doing some redemption of the prequels in this. One of the comments I had with it, and I mentioned this to Ben, one of the things that I thought was very intriguing is the fact that Obi-Wan won't strike down Vader again. Yeah. Even after, you have Anakin make the statement, Anakin is dead. Yeah. I am Vader, I have killed him. You still have him do then Anakin is truly dead and walks away, which is exactly the scene out of Jedi.
Luke says that my father is truly
dead.
But we know Luke doesn't believe it because he doesn't stop trying to redeem him. So maybe Obi-Wan doesn't believe it either.
Same idea, but he obviously fails to strike down Vader. Though obviously he could have, and for a while it looked like he was going to. And I'm like, how are they going to get themselves out of this? That was the thing I had with it. But one of the questions I had from it, and I said, if we start at New Hope and we go forward, has there been any Jedi who has actually actively struck down another character with their lightsaber? And the comment with it is, I'm not sure Luke...
Like a major character. Luke hits a lot of people with his lightsaber during fight scenes and stuff. Like
he had a lot of sort of hitting stormtroopers and sort of things like that, with it.
The only one we could think of was, the closest we got was Kylo Ren uses his saber to kill Snoke in Episode 8.
At the same time, Kylo Ren's a Sith, presumably. Yeah. And in some sense that's completely fitting because he's striking down the Master, which is sort of what's supposed to happen. the thing that I had with it is the concept of the Jedi are supposed to be better than that. And kind of where I really got from it is, again, the conversation between Reva and Obi-Wan at the end with the, I couldn't do it, and the line with it is, and I think it's Reva's line, with the, am I going to become him? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way she says it. I don't think she says, am I going to become Vader? I think she says, am I going to become him? With it. And he said, no, and now it's your choice. And after seeing her whole conflict and the way they did that lovely flashback sort of her and everything like that, and the conflict of can she strike down Luke? Can she actually strike out against this? But the idea of somehow showing mercy is like the ultimate of being a Jedi, to the fact that he can even turn a Sith. Like that's what can, mercy is what can turn a Sith back into a Jedi and sort of stuff like that.
Just kind of some echoes of Lord of the Rings there. Like there's that final line, there's a line Gandalf says to Frodo at some point, where he says the fate of the mercy of Bilbo Baggins may rule the fate of the world, which winds up being true. Bilbo does not kill Gollum, and it takes Gollum to finally destroy the ring, however inadvertently.
Yeah, and so you kind of get those kind of things with it. I really wonder about it is after Portals New Hope, did the writers go and look and realize that really the Jedi don't purposefully strike down people with their lightsabers. They do it in battle scenes and sort of things like that.
The prequels are mostly fighting droids.
Yep, but there's one very important scene with a Jedi striking down a major character, which is Mace Windu striking down Jango Fett.
Yeah.
And the comment I made with it is I said, do we now reinterpret that scene as showing part of the corruption of the Jedi Temple?
Yeah.
That the Jedi had fallen, because now we're in the start of the Clone Wars. They're now becoming the generals, they're becoming warriors. Do we actually have that being the idea that the Jedi no longer are what they are supposed to represent? And particularly if we then tie that into the scene where Anakin becomes Vader. He becomes Vader because he kills Mace Windu to stop Mace Windu from killing Palpatine. Mm-hmm. Do we have that idea that now, in some sense, Mace Windu, the strongest of all Jedi, was failing? Mm-hmm. And now, complete post hoc rationalization, is that why his blade is purple?
Interesting. So are there any other purple blades? I guess
No.
I can't think of any.
And my understanding is the reason why his blade is purple is solely so the fact that his son could see him in the large Jedi scene.
Yeah, I remember Samuel L. Jackson said he just wanted a purple lightsaber, and they're like, yeah, okay, fine.
And things like that. But so again, it's because this is unique. But can we now rationalize that of the idea that yellow, green, blue are true Jedi, purple is now not.
Something else.
We also have the concept that Ahsoka is white, she's not a Jedi, which was the other thing my son caught when I went back and watched New Hope. In the special edition, I don't know which version of special edition this is, when Luke is handed Anakin's lightsaber and turns it on and is looking at it, the blade's white.
I'm going to assume that it's just a problem with the rotoscope they used to put the
It's not.
blade.
Special edition. They re-edited it over.
All right, I'll have to go back and look at that, because I know there's a couple sequences where the rotoscope didn't work, and they did not fix it.
Yeah. But it's one of those where I wondered in conjunction with it is, it's still got a bluish tinge to it.
Yeah.
But is the idea being that they're trying to use these concepts of lightsabers even more? They obviously could have further edited. We know they further edited the special edition.
And we know they've fiddled with the idea that the colors mean something. We got that in the anime series, which, by the way, we should mention, they're doing a whole second round of the anime series. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
There's a whole new, what was it called? Visions? Star Wars Visions? They're doing a whole second series of them.
Well, those were cool, so that'd be cool to see. But yeah, I really kind of wonder if there's a little bit of post hoc reasoning. And again, the idea of the purple lightsaber suddenly being, well, purple's closer to red than green and blue are.
Yeah.
Do we actually have, and again, the way I looked at it is said sort of from redeeming the prequels, has one of the things we've done in the prequels is actually made the idea that the Jedi were already falling earlier in the prequels.
Well, you and I have talked before, one of the parts of the prequels that just never made a whole lot of sense is the prophecy.
Yeah.
We have the prophecy that somebody's going to bring balance to the Force. I think you and I would both think, okay, well, that means that it's about equally balanced on both the dark and the light side. But then the Jedi are all well aware that there's only ever two Sith, and there's a whole room full of Jedi. So if you balance it out, it means you either need more Sith or less Jedi. So I don't know why they're so eager to bring this prophecy to light. It never made any sense to me, and I've yet to hear a coherent explanation of it.
Yeah, and again, those are the kind of things where I think these are the stuff we're asserting now potentially is shown by the prequels was clearly not intended by the prequels. In the same way that, Alec Guinness did not know that who Luke Skywalker actually was in his relationship with Darth Vader when he delivers those lines.
No, neither did George Lucas at the time.
It sure looks like
he does.
did.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So again, I put that into really good writing in Kenobi. And I think you have to look at it and say Kenobi's the only thing that can give it that effect. It was very good writing, and people that were really probably spent some time watching these scenes.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail.
And thinking through, and that's your comments of the idea of, they put in small details that really made this part work.
Yep.
And it's the one thing we hadn't seen a lot of, quite frankly, in Star Wars. We'd sort of seen in The Mandalorian. It was starting to really happen in The Mandalorian. And it did happen a bit in Clone Wars, too. And in sort of in Rebels in the end, but that got a bit too mystical at the end. But I really kind of wonder if part of this is you've just got real fans that know these things just inside and out. They know the mythos inside and out, writing this to the point where they can post hoc justify things.
Yeah. Let's go the other way. Anything that you thought what were the weak points of this series? There's a couple spots where I thought it dragged on a little bit, and there's some fan service. I liked seeing the Emperor and Qui-Gon at the end. Definitely did not feel that it was necessary. It felt the way they did it felt kind of tacked on. Like, all right, we haven't really done anything like that yet, so let's throw a couple more cameos in of Ian McDiarmid and Liam Neeson. The fans will like that, and they're right. I did. Yeah. But it did feel a little hackneyed.
Everything after Reva comes back with Luke actually feels a bit like a tack on as to what it was. I wasn't sure why we needed Lola. To be quite truthful, I get the point of the idea of sort of the...
so I'm given to understand that is a Carrie Fisher homage. There's some photo of her with a bird or a pet or something when she was young, and they put Lola in as sort of an homage to
and
Carrie
the same
Fisher.
With the holster, is my understanding. That's a sort of similar type of thing in conjunction with
the Lola character is used to track Leia down at some point, but there's other ways to address that.
The thing that I had with it is it sort of felt a bit like trying to use a droid as a comedic relief and needing to have a droid, because there's no other droids that really appear in it.
True.
That was my one complaint with it. That felt a bit tacked on. At the same time, it enhanced Leia's childlike qualities. Yeah. Which I think made some sense. I thought we had a.
It also gave her someone to talk to when she needed to narrate by herself.
Yes. I thought we did a bit too... There was one hanging thing that bothered me, which is Bail Organa was supposed to be on his way to Tatooine when the Inquisitor actually arrived, because that's... When Reva sees the message, it's the message to Obi-Wan that Bail is headed to Tatooine. Yeah. I completely expected Bail to be there and interrupt the Inquisitor. That was where they were going. Yeah. But we have no indication Bail ever made it to Tatooine. And I was kind of like, wait a minute, why do we have... That message is important, but why is the message something that itself doesn't happen? That one bothered me. And I think that's the only thing that I saw sort of an inconsistency that bothered me. I did not like the idea of sort of striking down the Grand Inquisitor and having him come back.
Yeah, that also, I haven't watched Rebels, so I understand that people who saw that have seen Rebels expected him to be back. Yeah. And then knew he wasn't really dead. I didn't know that. So when he came back, I was like, oh, that guy lived. And the only explanation we get is, I didn't want to die.
Revenge is a good motivation. Yeah, which is to give her the motivation, too.
But normally when they do something like that, they at least make an effort to head fake you. Like, when Vader hits her in the shoulder, that's the universal sign of this character is not dead.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's those kind of things that I had with it. So my critiques of it, I think, that were negative for the most part are fairly small.
Mine are too. There are things that would bother me if it wasn't otherwise well done. Yeah. But since the good stuff is really good, I'm more willing to overlook those flaws. Yeah. Oh, and also, the fake Jedi guy on the first planet.
Yes.
I actually liked him a lot. I was so glad they brought that character back and made him kind of a more nuanced character he's kind of a shyster, but he's also not totally bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they did a good job in conjunction with him into what it is. I also like the fact that he clearly looks fake. Like, when they do it, and you see him, like, zoom the thing across you, it's like, that doesn't look right. And, again, it gives some credit to the special effects people for making the special effects in some cases look natural, in some cases look like special effects. It's like, okay, that's actually kind of cool.
And then also, I liked the alien on the planet they go to after they escape, who puts them in the back of, like, a truck. And he's talking about how, the Empire's imposed some law and order and kind of put things back right, and... trying to explain how people are rationalizing the Empire away.
It was a very Mandalorian scene, actually. It was very much the Mandalorian scene with the idea of, hey, these guys are. I got to live with these guys,
Yeah.
and some of that stuff you got from the Mandalorian with it,
And the Bad Batch too. You see people in these planets like, all right, they're here now, nothing I can do about it. How do we make the best out of this? And
Yeah, and again, those are the kind of things I think they just did very well in conjunction with it. They did even a little bit of humanizing the Empire when you have the stormtroopers just sort of chatting about their work assignments, and stuff like that. These are all people and things like that. And you kind of get into that point of the, how many innocent people did we kill when we blew up the Death Star?
Yeah. And there was the female officer they introduced who was an undercover agent for the rebellion. I liked her character. I was really hoping, I forget her name now, I was hoping that she would survive and maybe be like part of a little maybe Kenobi romance that kind of takes place after the fact, but of course it's Star Wars, so no.
And let's face it, Kenobi has a brother.
Yeah, well, we find out Kenobi has a brother we've never heard of.
Yeah, hold on,
Paul Kenobi. Yeah,
Paul Kenobi.
Everybody knows him.
Obi was Kenobi.
I was kind of hoping they'd throw in a line too, because at the end, Skywalker, there's still a Luke Skywalker going by the name Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, and so we're gonna investigate that. Not at all, and. Vader, I think he knows Kenobi's on Tatooine by the end. Does he know that or not?
He doesn't seem to know it.
No,
he says I'm searching, we'll find him, he won't escape us. And the Emperor's like, you're not doing it. And then he does the...
I guess Reva's the only one who knows, and presumably she's going to keep her mouth shut. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing I had coming out of the show is, sort of future intentions with it. First thing I had in conjunction with it is, can we have another show with young Leia? She was just so cool.
I don't know where they found that actress, but she
is Leia.
I was prepared to be annoyed by her, and I was like, no, this is the second. This is a reincarnation of young Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, she is so channeling Carrie Fisher. It's not.
She even
funny.
looks like her a little bit. Her mannerisms.
Well, and that's why I said there's a scene in it when you see her spin, and she actually has the curl on it, and she's wearing a green outfit. And when I saw it the first time when it flashed past, I actually thought it was the scene from Return of the Jedi where Leia is shot. That was what we were seeing, was him seeing these flashbacks, and they threw in a few Jedi ones in addition to what was happening with Leia and Luke at the time.
I thought both were well cast. The little boy resembled like a young Mark Hamill. It was convincing enough,
But particularly when it did it, is watching it, when I went back in slow mode through the entire scene and saw it was only young Leia scenes, and it was pretty much all stuff from this show. But when I saw that scene, I'm like, she just looks like Leia in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
The costume choicing, the hair, the way they did her hair, and just her. And her mannerisms are so Carrie Fisher. And the one thing I think was great about it, and I do this sort of with it, say whatever you like about Rey, I think the vast majority of people would say the best woman character in Star Wars generally is Princess Leia.
Oh,
everybody loves Princess Leia.
She's, in Episode 4, she is so, she's just imperialistic. She's demanding and entitled, a little bit bratty. Even while she's a prisoner of Vader, she's still kind of a brat about it.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you really get what I liked about her is...
She's fearless.
She's fearless.
Utterly fearless, yeah.
And she's fearless all the way through it. And you get so many of the tropes of the people who are like, why do people dress up as Leia in the slave costume? Why do they see that as sort of, being, like something that, little girl should aspire to? And I always loved the comment by whoever it was that responded back and goes, wait a minute, because she was forced to wear it by some imperialistic person who literally owned her as a slave, and the result of what she did was choke them with her own chains?
She was literally enslaved by a male slug, and she killed him with her own chains.
Like, how can you not look at this as being inspiring? Like, okay, this is a good thing. And that's, to me, that was always Carrie Fisher. That was Carrie Fisher as Leia was always great, and what was great about it is when they did the sequels, and they had the older Carrie Fisher in it, she takes that role of kind of being the sort of impulsive, strong-willed person, and turns it into what I would call the classic older general.
Yeah. She those personality traits mature. Yeah. It's tinged a little bit with maternalism and with age, and you see that she's, it's a natural progression of the character that really works pretty well, and it's a shame that we lost her when we did. It would have been great to have her for that last one. I wonder how much better that third movie would have been in the sequels if
Carrie Fisher had been able to be in it.
Around,
So and that kind of thing, and I really have to give the girl who played Leia in this, like, she is young Leia, like, without any question, she is young Leia. And somebody did a great job in casting there.
Her name is Vivian Blair.
Yeah,
no, she looks just like her.
And she also behaves just like her, and that's what I loved about it. And you got to wonder, like, is she a fan of Princess Leia? Is that the reason she was interested in this role and stuff like that, is because she is a fan of Princess Leia? The big thing I really want to call out in Kenobi, and this is just sort of my background, for you guys who know, I did theater tech for years. I was a sound designer, I was a light designer in conjunction with it. The backstage people at Kenobi did an utterly incredible job with this. Like, you know, there's all the people who are, you know, not going to appear in the credits that anybody watched unless you were looking for a cutscene. That just did incredible. The music in this is incredible. The costuming and the way they did the costume choices is great. The props and a lot of the uses of props are great, like the T-14 and sort of stuff like that. You know, with it just, it's one of those things where there's so much, like, the subtle stuff that you never see go right or wrong in it went so right in this movie. You know, the lighting is well done. You know, like, everything just went really right in this from a technical background point of view that had nothing to do with acting.
Yeah.
And made these subtle pieces that you don't even necessarily notice right away just work.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that really impressed me. And
the timeline was smoother and less choppy than what we've seen in The Mandalorian, where we know time is passing, but it's hard to gauge how much.
Yeah.
So although I'm swept up in the story there, I'm still kind of a little lost temporally as far as, so how long has he been here? What's going on? And it feels like sometimes weeks pass during a cutscene or a wipe transition. This one felt a little more structured, like pretty consistent from episode to episode.
Very well written. I think, you know, for lack of a better term, Disney is clearly learning, and I think the people they've got working on the big thing for it is Star Wars is clearly a much better TV show than it ever was movies.
Yeah. Although I did hear an argument that the Boba Fett series probably should have just been a movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Cut out a lot of the cruft there and the extra bloat to take out the Mandalorian pieces and just make it a movie.
Yeah, you could have made it a movie as to what it was, but Kenobi really showed how this worked well as a serial. It introduced new potential, you know, Trice Reva's story, you know, being one of them, Obi-Wan's brother's story, you know, being one of them.
Paul.
It'll be interesting to see where these kind of things go. As again, I was really kind of stunned we never saw Ahsoka. I was completely expecting to sort of see Ahsoka.
Because we know they've got an actress lined up to play her, and you know she's around at this time, so that seems like a missed opportunity, but maybe she's busy doing that one.
And so, you know, that kind of thing. I even thought, like, the idea with Qui-Gon sort of saying to Ben, hey, you know, of course I've been here the whole time, you just weren't ready to see me, and sort of the idea of, like, okay, there's a lot of preparation sort of things here.
And we have to acknowledge the Jawa from the very first episode that's bringing him stuff, stealing his stuff and selling it back to him.
I literally used that line on my son the other day when he was trying to get me to do something in his store, and I'm like, you're a Jawa, you're stealing my stuff and telling me I have to buy it from you. I'm like, can you at least clean it first?
Well, you know, we see Obi-Wan's been living in a cave. I like the beginning part where he's like working as like a meat packer basically, and just like I mean, he's resigned himself. He's not using the Force. He has to kind of rediscover that muscle. And so we have, you know, a lot of the series is him kind of coming back to the Force, which echoes the journey Luke makes later in Episode 8. So there's a lot of really just subtle things they did to tie all these different 3 trilogies together thematically in this one 6-episode arc.
And even, like you said, a lot of the dialogue between, you know, Obi-Wan and Vader matching the dialogue between Luke and Vader from Return to the Jedi. One of the ones I thought was really intriguing is the very end with you know, Owen doing the want to meet him.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of that this is Luke's first introduction to Ben Kenobi.
Yep.
And that's how he knows him, you know, that's the eccentric old guy, you know, that sort of lives out there.
You can see why Luke would think of him as old Ben, setting aside the fact that Alec Guinness is like in his 70s when they filmed that. From Luke's perspective as a little kid seeing an old bearded guy, he's always going to seem like an old man.
Yeah, and you know, those kind of things I think just worked really, really well. Again, the subtleties of, like, the fact that Darth Vader has the same appearance when the helmet comes off that we're used to.
Yep.
You one of the comments you made, and I think was a good one, the way Vader's speech slows during the course of it. And the sort of intermixing of Hayden's speech and James Earl Jones, you know, sort of with it.
That's one of the juxtapositions that always jumped out to me, is the cadence and the tempo of Christensen's speech in the prequels. He's brash, he's ambitious, he's excitable, he rushes off and does things without thinking, and he talks fast. You and I, you know, we know our own, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Vader is very slow and deliberate, and that's what makes him threatening. But he also has the impulsiveness and the temper. But you rarely see Vader like raise his voice and get like emotional.
Yeah.
A little bit at the beginning of Episode 4, but otherwise not a ton of that.
Well, and they did a good job with that, with the very tie-in at the end of Rogue One, where you get him to be much more impulsive when he's going after the Tantive 4, but then the idea that now he has it, no, he's more... People always describe him as he's the pit bull on a leash. You know, that's the idea behind. He really is in Episode 4. He's the pit bull on a leash. You know, the Emperor's calling the shots, and even you get the generals are a bit disrespectful of him.
Yeah,
you know, because he's not a general, and you kind of get a little bit where that comes from. he's a bit of just an enforcer.
Yeah, he's kind of a relic in their minds. I mean, the Emperor has successfully exterminated the Jedi, and so as far as they're concerned, like we've got this one random guy still hanging around, and he's kind of annoying. He's always talking about his religion, and you can see why they're like, no, screw that. The hell with that. We've got
he's
this
a strange guy in this big imposing suit too, which quite frankly, if it wasn't scary, it would be dumb.
They're all sitting there. I mean, in episode 4, you got to put yourself in their shoes. They're sitting around a conference room table having a meeting, and a guy in a suit is hanging around talking about his religion. And they're like, "Oh, here we go again with this." You knock it. Just stop with that.
We now command a battle station that's the size of a small moon.
Like in their mind, the Emperor has transitioned from this quasi-religious theocratic republic that was corrupt and broken and causing all these problems with these Jedi. Well, they're all gone, and now we have a proper, it's basically a military government. And so we don't. Why does the Emperor keep this guy laying around? So you can see why they're kind of dismissive. And then when the Death Star blows up, there's a power vacuum, and he has to kind of step up.
Yeah, and again, I think you really do. They just did a great job in this show of tying stuff together, and I have to admit, having seen this, I'm now really anticipating the next ones. I'm starting to anticipate even more Ahsoka, and the idea of just where can we go? Like, they did such a good job with this. Where can they go, and what's it going to do? And I'm going to put a plug in here as well. What's been so interesting about this is while we started watching this, my daughter, because it's her favorite superhero, we have started watching Ms. Marvel. Mm-hmm. Ms. Marvel's doing this in the Marvel Universe too. Mm-hmm. And I have been, if you guys aren't watching it yet, if you have any interest at all, you have no interest in the Marvel Universe, Ms. Marvel might be the best thing I've seen in the Marvel Universe.
I haven't seen it yet.
And part of the reason for it is because there's a, for lack of a better term, casualness with the universe simply exists this way. And that's the way it's kind of set up in Ms. Marvel. It's, yes, these superheroes save the world. That kind of stuff happens every so often. Moving on, and it's like, wait, that's kind of cool. Like that's just accepted, and everybody is living their lives around it, which is not something you ever really saw in the Marvel Universe. Even in the comic books, it was always the fact that it was the superhero stories, and in some sense, Miss Marvel is not a superhero story. Yes, it is, but it's the story of all the people around her. Mm-hmm. And they're just living normal lives, and what does that then mean when you have a superhero in your midst?
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. I thought it's something where I kind of wonder how much of this is Disney just now finding its stride, and quite frankly, having enough money that they can do anything the hell they want, and that knowing it's going to be successful. Is that what this is doing?
So where do we put Kenobi in the final analysis? Is it above or below Mandalorian?
Right now, I think I have to say it's above Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying it's above Mandalorian is because Mandalorian's got to keep going.
Yeah.
If Mandalorian was just the first season kind of ended, they may be more equal, but Mandalorian has to keep going. Kenobi doesn't have to. It gets to be a standalone.
Yeah.
And so I think it's above it. I mean, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah. I had seen a rumor that they're going to do a Kenobi season 2, because you and I had talked about what are they going to do with Kenobi? Like the characters on Tatooine, what adventure is he going to have? And this is not at all what I thought they were going to do with it. So kudos to them for that. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if they actually do a season 2. If anybody knows out there, if they've confirmed that or not, let us know. Otherwise, I think I'm on board. I think right now, just as a standalone series, Kenobi is probably the best thing they've done so far on Disney+. Not to say it's flawless by any means, but pretty darn good. Mandalorian has, of course, its high points, but there is sort of an expectation to keep moving it forward, and that's hard. That's hard. Like once it's easy to make it's easier to make the first season and say, okay, sigh of relief, this isn't terrible. That's really all it has to be, is not terrible, and people will be satisfied with it. But now you've set the bar, and it's really hard to keep outdoing yourself.
Wasn't that a comment with when they made Lord of the Rings? Of the whole idea is it's don't screw it up.
Yeah.
It's it doesn't have to be a good movie, just don't screw it up.
Yeah. That was the rule here too. Okay, so that's all for Kenobi. We've got more content we're going to work on. I've got a whole sheet I'm looking at on the wall here of stuff we're going to talk about. So we will be getting to that in due course over the remainder of the year. Like we said earlier, we're trying to get one episode out per month. That has not happened consistently, but we are going to try and average that by year end and keep this rolling.
And this is a nice long episode of us talking about nothing but Star Wars for those of you fans who like this and those of you that hate it.
Yes, if you hate it, then you probably stopped listening 3 seconds in, so you're not still here. So, but for the rest of you, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Lewis Rice LLC, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. This podcast was produced and recorded in St. Louis, Missouri.